Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to move way beyond the simple question and answer AI you might be used to. We are diving deep into the world of intelligent, orchestrated agentic workflows. This is the real architecture that lets an AI truly think, plan, and solve some seriously complex problems. So right off the bat, you can see the huge difference here. On the left, you've got your traditional or naive RAG. That's retrieval augmented generation. It's super linear. You ask a question, it retrieves some info, generates an answer, and boom, it's done. But look at the right, the agentic approach. It adds these crucial steps: plan and reasoning. The system doesn't just grab the first thing it finds, it actually strategizes about how to get the best possible answer.
And that big change, well, that's what we call the agentic leap. It's really the answer to the limitations of older models, which, they really struggled if you asked a question that had multiple parts or needed a few steps to figure out. So it's not just about giving the AI a library to search anymore. We're actually giving it a toolkit and teaching it how to think. It learns to plan, to reason, and to adapt its approach based on what it finds. It's all about breaking down a problem and figuring out which tools to use to solve it.
Okay, so before we can build a whole AI team, we gotta understand how just one agent thinks. So let's take a look at the core reasoning patterns that give an individual agent all its power.
First up, and this one is absolutely critical, is planning. For any task that's going to take a while or has a lot of moving parts, this is a must. Instead of just jumping right in, the agent actually creates a roadmap first. This foresight is huge because it helps avoid costly mistakes that could mess up the whole process.
Next up, we've got reflection, or self-critique. And this is where things get really smart. The agent will produce an answer, but then it actually stops and asks itself, hey, is this right? Am I missing anything? It then refines its own work over and over until it hits a certain quality bar. I mean, this self-correction ability is a total game changer for reliability. And this right here, this illustrates one of the most dynamic patterns out there, REACT, which stands for reason and act. It's this incredibly powerful loop. The agent starts with a thought, then it takes an action using one of its tools, and then it makes an observation. And that observation feeds directly back into its next thought. It's a cycle that lets it adjust its plan on the fly.
Okay, so a single agent is pretty smart on its own. But what happens when a problem is just too big, too complex for one agent to tackle? Well, you do what we do. You build a team. Now, this diagram gives us a great high-level view of how we can organize these AI teams. Don't worry about trying to read every single word on here. Just think of it like an architect's blueprint. We're about to cover the four main patterns you see here: sequential, parallel, router, and critique. And they're all different ways of structuring a workflow to solve different kinds of problems.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How do we actually orchestrate these teams? How do we get all these specialized agents to work together to hit a common goal? Let's break down those blueprints.
Okay, so our first two patterns are sequential and parallel. The sequential workflow, it's pretty much like an assembly line. Agent A does its part, then passes the work to Agent B, and so on. This is perfect for things like support bots, where you need to remember the context of the conversation. On the other hand, a parallel workflow is all about speed. You have multiple agents attacking different parts of the problem at the same time, and their results get merged at the end. Great for deep research when you're on a deadline.
Now, the hierarchical pattern, this one's probably my favorite because it's just so intuitive. It's literally like an organization chart. You have a manager agent that breaks the main goal down into smaller tasks. Then it assigns those tasks to specialized worker agents, and at the end, it pulls all their work together into one final result. Think of the router workflow like a traffic cop, or maybe a really good project dispatcher. An initial agent looks at the incoming question and sends it to the best specialist for that job. Is it a data question? Off to the data agent. Does it need a web search? Send it to the search agent. This makes sure the expert is always on the case, which really maximizes the quality of the answer. All right, so with all this incredible power comes a pretty big need for control, right? When we start moving these systems into the real world, into production, we absolutely have to think about making them safe, reliable, and predictable. And that's where the critique workflow comes in. It's a fantastic safety pattern. It basically formalizes that self-reflection idea we talked about earlier. So before any response is delivered, it goes through a critique loop where it gets checked and refined. This is so essential for high-stakes stuff, like medical analysis, where a mistake could have really serious consequences.
But, there's no free lunch here. Every single one of these architectural choices comes with trade-offs. A sequential flow? It can be slow. A router? it might get confused by a vague question. Parallel agents, they can get really expensive with compute costs. And that super valuable critique loop, it adds time. The key is to pick the pattern with the right set of compromises for your specific problem.
And for those really, really critical systems, there's the ultimate safety net: human in the loop. This pattern builds in a mandatory stopgap where a person, a human, has to review and approve an action before it happens. Think about executing a big financial trade or sending an email to thousands of people. This gives you that essential oversight you need.
All right, we've covered a lot. We've talked about individual patterns, we've talked about team structures. So now for the most practical part. How do you actually choose the right workflow for your project?
And here it is. Think of this as your practical cheat sheet. You just have to look at your goal, the complexity, and the risk level. For a simple Q&A with low risk, a basic React loop is perfect. But if you need super high accuracy for a critical task, this chart will guide you towards something like a debate plus validator pattern. And for high-risk automation, you're definitely going to want a hierarchical system with a human in the loop for safety.
You know, this quote right here really nails the main takeaway from all of this. Building sophisticated AI isn't about finding one single magic model. It's about becoming an architect. It's about composing and combining these different workflow patterns in smart, modular ways to build a system that's perfectly designed for the job. So, we've laid out the core reasoning patterns, the team structures, and the safety controls. You basically have the architectural blueprints now. The only question left is, what complex problem are you going to go out and build a solution for? Thanks for tuning in.